it's stealthy and it's very dark here. For those of you wondering what happened, someone was commenting that they were sent us money and they bought one of our training bundles because they wanted to help support the channel. So, and I was explaining that that's how you pay to keep the lights on. The lights are currently off in here. So we're in the disorder part of the law and disorder show. So today is all going to be about criminal intent to commit crime, conspiracy, and the commission of the crime using the Claris FileMaker unified platform. Very exciting. So everyone, welcome to the dark side. Today is law and disorder. Now, this show is not costing any of you any money. It's completely free training. We're broadcasting on YouTube, Twitch, Discord, and Zoom. If you have a active subscription with us, you have been given a Zoom link. If you don't have that, let us know. You can come in. It allows you to interact with us a little better. Let's talk about the current broadcast schedule and what's going on. So I'm going to hit the button. If you go to fmtrain.tv at the top, then you can see this live training right here. We are actively updating the way, for those of you who are here, actively updating the way that we deliver content to you. This is a subscriber access area where if you're a paid subscriber, you'll get this here. We had a video player that worked in FileMaker. It just didn't give us the flexibility that we needed with certain things. And it was also hard to update. This way, if we have a bug on the website, we fix it once and it works. It fixes for everyone. So in here is also the way we deliver. Like if you buy a bundle, let's talk about how you support the channel real quick. These are the 3 levels of bundle. We don't sell individual training anymore. It's just we have too many courses. There's too many shenanigans going on. It's just too much. We have only 3 SKUs. We have basic, plus, and complete. Complete means that you are a whole individual without any defects in your personality. We hook you up with a licensed therapist. We will help you with your FileMaker therapy. Plus bundles like Disney Plus, you get everything except the therapy part of it, right? And then the basic training is just like water and bread, but it's better than nothing. It solves a lot. This is the progression of learning. What are we learning today? We're learning about variables, and there's some stuff in here a lot of you have not heard or seen. Some of you think you're badass scripters, and most of you probably are, but there's some things in here that you probably haven't heard, little nuggets of wisdom I'm going to drop in your head that you want to save for down the road. So we're assuming that everyone's starting off as a brand new developer, and we're trying to push them towards this intermediate developer stage. Let's talk about today's broadcast and what we're doing. So this is the outline for today. This is the curriculum that me and Margaret and a couple of people have been helping us write. We took FileMaker's curriculum that they abandoned back in 2015, and we've been updating their curriculum to modernize it and to break it down. So it has bits and pieces of Claris stuff, and then common sense from yours truly. Friday was a conversation about the introduction of scripting. So today we're going to be talking about variables. So here we go. First off, so variable is nothing more. I was looking in my props over here. Here is a variable. This is a variable. This is a 5-gallon bucket. This is essentially a variable. It's a container that holds stuff. This is a 8-ounce bucket. Is that what this is? Probably 8 ounces of 12 fluid ounces of wonderful goodness, 0 sugar, caffeination. So these are variables in the world of programming. Variables are not specific to FileMaker. If you do JavaScript programming or program in any other language, they're going to have variables. Variables allow you to set data into the box, put something in here, and then go back and get it later or reference it later or change it later or do something. Variables are auto-sizing. So it's kind of an important, people like, well, how come you have this variable? And how come I have this variable? And I want a big variable versus a small variable. In the world of FileMaker, the variables auto-size, which means that if you put a little tiny gold diamond or something, or a little diamond off a diamond ring in a box, the variable automatically sized to fit that. If you put a picture of Ruben and a frog from Discord in a 3 or 4 megabyte photo, or even a video in a variable, the variable will automatically size to hold that. There is some sort of practical limit when you get to like many megabytes. Understand that variables are specific to you, the client in that session. So when you are in a multi-user environment, so this is your FileMaker server, your data lives here. We're all clear on this, right? Your data lives in the FileMaker server. When a developer or user, anyone opens a FileMaker application, you're opening the FMP12 file, even if it's local, you are creating your own session. The same sort of thing happens with a browser. When you log into a website, that browser starts a session between you and that server. So if you notice that, for example, you're going to go to Amazon and you're going to do your shopping history, right? And the other day I went to shopping history and it was looking at all the criminal activity type things I was looking for, right? Masks, bandanas, way of jamming and hiding my identity, my phone. Well, I logged back in, it remembers who I was. Now it gets into this idea of cookies and things like that. I'm not going to dive into that, but the point is that the things that are specific to me stay with me. The things that are specific to other people, you don't share with them. Like I'm sure Ruben has been looking at, questionable frog mating toys, right? So if you have frogs, you're trying to reproduce frogs like Kermit the Frog, then you go to Amazon, look for certain toys that might help you in the frog mating process. Well, the rub is that I don't want to see that. I don't need to see that. That's specific to Ruben's session. It's not my session. So understand that when you are logged in, as you put things in variables, those are only going to be seen by you. If you, Ruben, or Ed, or Foxy Jack log on, and you log on with two computers, even though you are you, those computers have separate sessions. They don't understand that it's actually the same thing. So they're separate. So really, while I say it's you, it's really the individual piece of hardware that is logged in. That's a session. Understand that variables, there's two kinds of variables we're going to talk about this. Under no circumstances are they ever saved to the server. They never save to the server. So if like a test question on a certification test, well, if Sally does this and Fred does this, and it's Monday after 3 o'clock, and you put a photo of a frog in a variable, will that be saved? Which table and field will that be saved to? It's never saved at any time ever, which is really valuable because then you can put some things maybe that are semi-secure to that person in those variables, knowing that when they close FileMaker, they go away. Now, if they leave FileMaker, come back in, like they quit FileMaker or they restart the computer, or FileMaker crashes and they restart, those variables get blanked out and zeroed out. So that's an important concept. These are very, very important things to understand. Variables can hold any kind of data. Any data that you could put into a field, you could put into a variable, is the short version. I don't think there's an exception to that rule. I always hate painting in absolute colors, right? Like if I say, Ruben is a frog person, Ruben doesn't always like frogs. He likes other stuff too. So we got variables. You set a variable to equal a function, a calculation. That's how you normally set a variable. You set it to a calculation, right? The calculation could be a number or a mathematical formula of 13 plus 30, 30 plus 13. There is a set field function in scripts. There is a set variable function in scripts, okay? This is a testable topic. I don't do this that often. You can define a variable, a global. So there are two types of variables. Let's talk about these real quick because they're babbling about this in here, but really this should come before this other part up here. Let's talk about this. So you have a local variable, a global variable. In fact, this needs some more help in here. So let's talk about a local variable is one that you define that lives in a script. So if I go into starting point in scripts, there's all these scripts over here. They're kind of organized. We've talked about, I think we're going to come up and do more organization, but let's just say we have a script right here. It says show status toolbar or a get layout session. Those are pretty easy scripts. How about startup scripts? Startup scripts is a long script. This is a script that runs when starting point first starts up. Almost everyone should have a script that runs on startup. If you don't, then probably it's not a very sophisticated solution. It's kind of ad hoc. So what you do is that if you want to have a value that lives inside a script, it lives inside this script, and when the script is complete, that variable is blanked out, okay? Then that is a local variable. It's local to the script. That's it. Whenever you say it's a local variable, it's local to the script. The other kind of variable is a global variable. It's global to your session, right? You should write those down, Margaret. Local to the script, global to the session. So what happens if I have a local variable, you define it in here, and then the script ends. Whatever's in that local variable is gone. Pops like a balloon, gone. never to be seen from. There's no unwinding it. So don't put anything in there that you can't get rid of. The whole idea with local variables is that they're disposable. They're like disposable hand wipes. You wipe your hand, a little Lysol wipe or something, throw it in the trash. One use kind of deal. The global variable is one that lives during the session. So during a startup script, I probably set some variables in here to let people know, like, here it is. When it boots up the calendar, it's going to set these variables of how the calendar is set and what's going on. These will be set and will be available by any script during the rest of this session, which means if I quit FileMaker, not if I close most of the windows, as long as one window is running, the global variables are something that you're going to set, you can use during the rest of the session. FileMaker is generally pretty reliable, but if it crashes, it goes away. That's the idea here. A dollar with a name behind it is a global variable. A single dollar is a local to the script variable. Very important topic. What can we put in variables? Anything. We can put anything in them: photos, numbers, text, string, data, timestamps, dates, basically everything. And so understand that if this person has variables, they're his. If this person, they're theirs. Variables are universal on all clients. What are the clients in the FileMaker platform? Well, the most obvious client is FileMaker Server, right? And that is for Mac and Windows. The other kind of client is Go. That's your iPhone and iPad. And then there is FileMaker WebDirect, which is the web browser. So they all support variables. Now, what is another client that we all think of as a client? Can you give me another client? It's less obvious. We're going to get to it later in this series, but there is another kind of client. It's misleading, but it's a client, and you can set variables in there, and they work the same way with scripts. Where would you have scripts running? Remember, FileMaker Server itself doesn't really run scripts. The only thing that runs scripts are clients. You can have the FileMaker Server run a script for you. I didn't say it can't run the script, but when it runs a script, it pretends it's a client. So that's another kind of client. It runs on the server, SASE or PSOS. We're going to talk about this. Having server run scripts for you is one of the best performance things you could possibly do to help yourself out. Even if you're a beginning developer, knowing that they're there, that you can use them to enhance your performance is a great thing to remember. Save it as a nugget. Don't worry about it today. If literally the brand new person that Megan is working with and Jake Shealy are working with, if they have not done PSOS before, don't worry about it. Just know that you can tell the server to pretend it's a client and run a script for you. Margaret has a question.
Is local context sensitive and global not?
They are both have the equal levels of sensitiveness, right? Context sensitivity, right? Global, they both, the only difference between a global variable and a local variable is local variables die at the end of the script. When FileMaker, your client is running a script, normally Pro in our case for what we're doing today, and it gets in the script and it's done, whatever was local variables, they are dumped. The names are dumped, the contents are dumped, they go away. If I come over here, since I've opened starting point, I've got the, remember we talked about the tools menu on like day 1 or 2, how to turn on the tools menu, right? Remember that? We go to FileMaker Pro, and in Windows, a different spot. You're gonna go to settings, you're gonna turn on the advanced tools, and you're gonna quit and reopen, right? Then you get the tools menu up here. So if I go to data viewer, the data viewer will show me all the local or global variables that have been defined. So as of right now, these are the ones that were defined probably by the startup script, right? Remember we had the calendar one, so there's probably some calendar stuff in here, maybe if the calendar is enabled or whatever. If I crash FileMaker, all these variables get blanked out and they disappear. Now, a global variable, when will it appear in the data viewer? It only appears while the script is running. Well, normally the script is like warp 9.9.9, and it's like how many milliseconds? 0.15 milliseconds the script is done. So how long did the local variable, how long was it there? 0.15 milliseconds. That's pretty damn fast. I can't see things that fast. So when would it show up on the data viewer? It's not never. If you're telling a script to run and you tell it to slow down and step through it step by step by step, the script suddenly goes from milliseconds to slow motion. It'll stop. You could come in here and you'll see single dollar variables that'll be in here. We have the ability to cause a script to slow down. It's not really a beginner kind of thing, but it can be useful. I will make sure that we cover that one way or the other. All right, so these are variables. So the context They're both local. They're both specific to your context. Let me go back to our instructions here. I'm going to close this, close that. Oop, I closed the last window. Oh, so I closed it. Now, here's the other thing. A global variable is specific. I'm about to say something, but every once in a while, I want to make sure what I'm saying. So I just open it up and it pops up. This is the data viewer for starting point light. The startup script ran, it set these, right? Now, if I click over here off the computer and I go to Fire Marshal, now I'm seeing the current variables for the Fire Marshal file. If I click over here on starting point, 1, 2, 3, we see the variables for starting point. So not only are variables, and maybe this was the question someone was asking, but they are file specific and session specific, which would be a really kind of interesting hack, right? So you open a starting point with all the super secure data in there about when we're going to deliver methamphetamines across state lines to our regional distribution centers. We need to make sure we keep it secret so the cops don't find out about us. Understand that we want this to be confidential. We want it to be classified. When we deliver the stuff, we don't want it to go anywhere. Well, if you have all that in file A over here, then I get an email, a phishing email from the local law enforcement. Hey, Richard, you're an upstanding citizen. Double click this FileMaker file because we'll give you a free gift on Amazon. And you open it up. And then it's able to snarf out the variable data. That'd be bad. So FileMaker has security on there to help organized crime stay away from law enforcement. It's really a good feature. The variables are session specific and file specific and not end user specific, because really a session is the physical piece of hardware. Once again, I'm Richard Carlton. I have a laptop, computer here, computer over here, and phone. Those are separate sessions. This FileMaker server might see my credentials on all 5 of them, but it's not going to share the session data with all 5. It's one of the things you have to learn as a beginner. Like when we talked about customizing, if I go over here and I show the status toolbar up here at the top, remember the status toolbar, and I go to layout mode. FileMaker in the old days used to always show the little flippy control. Right now, if we're in browse mode, we do the flippy control. It flips between records. If I go to layout mode and it's over here, the flippy control flips layouts. Claris turned that off, right? So then we have to turn that back on. That setting is specific to this piece of hardware. I would love it if it was specific to Richard Carlton. It would follow me everywhere. But every time I get a computer or I have another computer, if it's on here, like right here, like if I right click and say customize it, this is a hardware specific item, session specific items, right? You have to understand the context of the item. Okay, next question. We're going to go back here to pages real quick, moving along because we got to get to casting. So why would you, back in the old days, back in 1912, when some of you were born along with me, variables didn't exist in FileMaker. And we used either values in fields or we used global fields, right? Because really, global field is not really saved, and it behaves a lot like a global variable, right? They're very, very similar, except that you have to manually define a global field in FileMaker. If you go into FileMaker, we're over here. I'm going to close this one. I'm going to go back to the very basic Fire Marshal Bill one, and I'm going to go File, Manage Database. In the future, I'm just going to use the keyboard shortcut. I go over here to Property. It used to be actually way back in the day that you would have called Global Status or something, and then it would be a type of field over here, right? And really, Claris came to the conclusion, and they were right about this. I think probably more of an engineering thing, because I'm pretty sure marketing doesn't know what a variable is. But what they did is they came over and realized that if you define a text field, what you want to do is specify in storage that it's stored as a global storage. So one value goes everywhere. We didn't really talk about this yet in this basic training, but this is the idea where you define the field, and I put the underscore G on there so I would know what it is when I see it. Anytime I put G underscore, that tells me it's a global. I don't do a lot of cute little indicators. Like some companies will put a Z, and then they'll put 2 Zs, and they'll put 3 Zs. So you have this field called ZZZ underscore status. Whatever. I don't know what that is. So I hit OK. This is now a text field with global storage. So The reason you would use variables is that you don't have to define them in the schema and the structure. You create them ad hoc in your scripting, which will make your life overall much better, because a lot of times you don't need this in here junking stuff up. That's the status right there. That's a global field. How is that different than a global variable? Global variable is defined in a script and it goes away when the session is over. A global field is defined in a schema. It goes away when the session is over, generally. All right, back to this. So we're working with variables. So what are the benefits of using variables in FileMaker Pro? I would say flexibility and portability in your FileMaker solutions. I guess the idea is if you copy a script and you paste it in another file, there's less broke stuff. I'm trying to behave myself. I was told I was too spicy last week, so I'm trying to be more G-rated. But it was portability. Like you think about it, like you copy a script, things are going to be broke from file A to file B. And so if you have variables in there using variables instead of global fields, then that's less broke stuff. Because if you copy a script that references a global variable, you have to define that variable first in the schema, then copy and paste a script over. And then if you didn't name it perfectly correct, it's still going to break. That's good. Flexibility and portability, that's good. Variables can be used instead of global fields, therefore can be decrease the complexity of your database schema. The little blue line is from me. Yep. Variables are stored in RAM generally. If you put a bunch of variables with photos and movies in them, they're not going to be in RAM. There's no way. The access is generally going to be faster. I think this is subjective and a maybe. Make calculations more readable by replacing numbers or complex formulas with simple words. Yeah, so if you have a formula, it's kind of like a let function a little bit where you define these complex things, right? And then you just do the bits of math on it. That's kind of a more advanced, you have to create a complex calculation first before you understand that. Variables allow you to calculate a value once and use it multiple times in calculations. Okay, that is a really good one. So here's the deal. If you have a calculation field that says get username or get time or anything, and you define that, and then you use it in a calculation like 10 times, right? Like every time it sees get current date, it's going to go out and talk to operating system to get the date. It's actually going to go fetch fresh data. So and you're like, well, that's dumb. Well, because trying to get FileMaker to do the thinking for you, I think the road to hell is paved with that one, because Claris could easily forget to update stuff and then you'd have a calc, you wouldn't know why it's broke. So they make it more reliable, but on a big complex calculation, if you have a lot of repetitive little bits, calculations in there, it's better to set your own $$ current date. And then you set that to a get function. So you calculate it once, then it's in the variable. Then that point forward, you just reference the variable. That will speed up your execution of your code. That's a good one. Using them on layouts as merge variables. We can cover that, Margaret, at the end, maybe, if you remember. Margaret, you awake? Your eyes are wide open. She just needs more. Margaret needs an emergency infusion of caffeine through an IV. They can be defined, oh, yeah. So it's more of an advanced topic again, but where we get to the point where if you create a PDF and you want to have a script save the PDF to the desktop or somewhere on your hard drive somewhere, not in a container, but onto as a file somewhere, you have to define the path. The path is going to be C drive / program file / FileMaker / whatever on Windows. On Mac, it's going to be the username, maybe Macintosh hard drive, Richard Carlton desktop, whatever. There's some things that you can do to get that path, but when you do those get functions, you put them in a variable. And then what you do is when you do a export, like a script, I'm just going to write a script here real quick. It's kind of big. I'm going to say create a script. We're going to call it, export or something. And then you have the script step called export. So you can export or import records. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to say export records. Okay. And then dialog off, create folders off. I'm going to do the settings over here. Specify the output file. Okay. You're going to need the path name. What you do is all you have to do is put $$ over here, or it's actually not a global variable, it's a local variable. See down there? See that down there at the bottom, the very bottom one? It says $. I would just call it path to export. And you use that same name. And what you would do is that you would set that there. Then up here, you would set the variable. set V for variable, and then we would, what was it? Path to export, right? And then you come over here to the value and you specify as a calculation, get path, P-A-T-H, path to the desktop path. So that right there will set it into there as a local variable. And then actually we could pause it. So you want to watch, here's a script. You want to watch how it works. We run it real fast. That's a local variable. When it gets down here, it's gone. So if you want to see if it's setting correctly, we're going to go to Tools, Script Debugger, have it over here, down here. And then I'm also going to have the data viewer be visible. Kind of have it down here too. And then we're going to come over here on this and we're going to say play, run the script, boom. Now the line it's on is the line it's about to execute. It has an execute alert. So it's on line 2. When I hit, not play, but step, this one right here. No, it's not. It's step over. I always hate the way it's labeled. It makes it sound like you're stepping over. It's like a pile of dog step over it. Don't drag your feet through it. That's the way I read that. So it's actually do this line, one line, and keep going. And there it is right there. So it created this variable. Now it's going to try to do an export. It can't really do an export. It can try it. So a step. And then it's going to whine. It couldn't. Desktop could not be created. Oh, I told it to create the folder. Right? Remember that over here? I told it to create the folder. Create folders off. Yeah, we'd have to monkey with this to get this set. But that's the idea. So we set that. So it's not really an import-export conversation. Otherwise, I'd have my demo set up. So that is the idea of a variable and a path, right? You can set variables up. Anyone understand what these are? Does anyone would anyone like to see me define a couple basic variables? Yes or no? Because a lot of people here have done this before, but if you haven't seen it, well, that's why I really needed a shoebox, right? Is what I need, but a shoebox is kind of the most cuddly little thing. So here is my 5-gallon can. This is misleading because it's kind of big, it's kind of orange, and if I need to put 6 gallons in it, it's going to spill over the top, right? And so this is misleading. Imagine that this orange can auto resizes in flight automatically, and you don't have to worry about it. In fact, it's totally automatic, which gets to the next thing I wanted to talk about variables, which is this idea that FileMaker has to know what you're putting in the variables and how to handle it. That's basically the name, and it's $1. It doesn't really matter the name you put in there. Is it case sensitive? I don't think so. I always pretend it is case sensitive. Every once in a while, about the time you think it's not case sensitive, you run into something that is, and then you don't know why it doesn't work. Defining a variable advanced topic and a let statement. I'm not going to cover let. That's way too advanced. Managing variables. Script variables. Okay, back up. Is there any other kind of variable beside a script variable? Okay, this is a question for Discord. Local variables always start with a single $, David Angel. Yes, always. And global variables are $2 signs. I have a question on Discord or anyone who's more of a established developer. Is there any, because I don't think we wrote this. I think this is Claris's marketing department from their curriculum in 2015 wrote this. Because we're specifying it's a script variable, this first line right here, which implies there's other kinds of variables. And a let function in a script can set it. You can't set it outside of a script. There's a global field, but that's a field. It's fundamentally a field. A global field is like this. It's the same kind of idea, but you define that in field definitions in the schema. A variable is set in scripts. So I would say variables are not available outside the file they're defined, period, okay? If you want to pass a variable from one FileMaker to another, considering global fields or script results. That's the passing of the post-it note on the football analogy we use sometimes. Using variables in your scripts and calculation, FileMaker will not warn you if you're using wrong or misspelled. Yes, so a lot of times like when you're doing like telling a script to run and call a script, and if the name is wrong or something's wrong in the formula, it'll fix it. This thing here won't do this. If you have Monkey Bread plugin, I highly recommend Christian Schmidt Monkey Bread plugin. It gives you additional capabilities. If you misspell it, you're on your own. Local and global variables, or even 2 local variables in different scripts, can have the same num, but it'll be treated as different variables before they have, So here, one of the big benefits of using a local variable, if you only need in the script, only use a local, and that is that it can stay alive and you forgot it was alive. Like say, for example, like a lot of times when you do basic programming, you do x equals x plus 1. Well, you could have a variable called $x. Well, if you have a variable called $x and you forget about it, it's already defined, then you define another script in another part of your solution, $x, you're going to overwrite it, right? So you need to give your variables a reasonably useful name. If you don't need the value to live beyond the end of the script, use a local one. The only time as a beginner, you might just go with globals is because that way when it's done running, you don't have to use it. Remember over here, I had the data viewer, I had to stop the script in flight to see what a local variable was. If you just use a global variable while you're learning as a beginner, you will see what it exists after the script ended without any special script debugger shenanigans. So I would, if you're brand new, just use global variables with $2. Just be aware that you could call it accidentally and run into it and then set something incorrect. Use the same name in two places. It's real simple. Variables are not secure. For example, data viewer may be used by users to modify, keep values and goals. Keep in mind if you're using, okay, but the data viewer is only available if you're an administrative. Well, for the script debugger, you sure the hell do. What about data viewer? I guess we should verify that. A let function can define a local variable, but it dies as soon as you leave that script, right? So Claris doesn't really quiz you or test you on that. Let functions are you create variables in there anyway, right? Normally they just die and go away, but the test question that Claris will ask on the certification is what other technique can you use to define a global variable besides creating a set variable command, right? And it's a let function. I'm going to go file. I'm going to say security. We got admin full access. I'm going to change this to 1234, 1234, set password. I'm going to create a new user, which will have data entry only. It's kind of normal. We'll call this will be Kermit, and then 1234, 1234, set password. So when I open it up, I'm going to have to be one or the other, right? Admin or Kermit, okay? Close the file, open the file, okay? I'm going to say admin 1234, okay? I can bring up the script debugger, no problem, and the data viewer, no problem. That's funny, it remembers the last error from the previous, okay? So close it. Now, make sure all the windows are all closed up here. See the windows? They're all closed, okay? Double click it. I want Kermit 1234. Now, I'm logged in as an end user. I can be in browse mode. If I try to go to layout mode, view, layout mode, see it's grayed out. So I can't do development. If I go to script workspace, it's grayed out. If I go to manage, almost everything here is grayed out. So I can add data, edit data, delete data. I cannot alter the structure of the FileMaker file, alter the layout of the file, write code, do anything, any development kind of activities I'm locked out of. So tools, script debugger. Ooh, that's interesting. That opened up. And data viewer. Your privileges do not allow you to view the data. You have to authenticate. Okay, so if you cause a script to run, script debugger, and I tell it to export, okay, so they're both protected. This is what I thought. Before I say lies and falsehoods, I want to verify. Data viewer and script debugger can be used for nefarious activities. However, I won't let me do script debugger unless I authenticate, and the data viewer just isn't visible unless you authenticate. So keep in mind that one thing. I would be careful. They say it's not secure. About the time you think it's secure, someone like Josh Ormond or Wim DeCourt will hack it. I had a contest one time, and another person who was presenting on the live streams said, hey, this file is totally secure. And I said, fine, we'll have some fun with that. And I put a $200 bounty out on a file that we thought was secure. They built two-factor authentication with scripts. I said, okay, here's $200 so someone can break into this. Wim DeCourt and Josh Ormond raced each other. 8 minutes into it, I owed someone $200. So if your security is based in scripts, you can't do that. You really have to go into the script area where you manage scripts. You have to go in there and build out the security and restricting people to layouts and records. You cannot secure it with scripts because they can get around it. If you want a global variable to persist from one session to another, it's recommended that you store the desired value in a non-global field and then have the startup script reestablish the desired variable when reopened, okay? Variables cannot hold images or files, only text. Is that right? I don't think that's right. Can we set, if I go to script, I have business logo. I'm going to write a script. I'm going to call it set Ruben's logo to a variable. Oh, you know, it might store it. We ran into this the other day. I think it stores it as a base 64. Then we both said at the same time. Margaret's been paying attention. All right, so here's the deal. Okay, this is one of those, when you write text in a manual and you make absolute statements like, you can't stick an image in a variable, kinda. So let's walk through this. So this is what I suspected. The following topic is going to be for more intermediate developers. If you're a brand new person in FileMaker, I'm going to try to keep it simple for you. I'm going to attempt to drag you along with me. So let's establish up front that here is a graphic. This is a graphic. It's here, okay? It's a PNG, something about Ruben's Fast Foods for frogs, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is I got this variable right here. I'm going to set a variable. I'm going to call it, we'll just forget local, we'll just go global, $logo, okay? Now I'm going to set it into business logo. So the business logo is a graphic over here. It's art. It's a graphic. It's a PNG. It's in there. So if I run this statement, it will take the picture out of the container and stick it in a variable. Will it work? And the answer is kinda, okay? And I've already given it away by talking about this with Margaret. If I say play, save all, and run it, of course, nothing happens. You can't tell. So how do we see what's in a variable? How do we do that? We go to FileMaker, we go to Tools, we go to Data Viewer, and then we got logo, and it says screenshot. Really? It took the file name and the timestamp, or just the file name, and stuck it in there. By itself, in its default behavior. So here's the deal. How many of you have ever seen Star Trek or sci-fi in general when they talk about molecular transport, a Star Trek transporter? Everyone know what I'm talking about, the analogy, right? Someone stands on the round thing, they say, Scotty, beam me up, and there it goes from point A to point B. So do they actually grab the person and like physically grab them and move them? No. How do they do it? They take that person, they break them down to the molecular level, and then they beam those molecules, those zeros and ones, those numbers across space to a receiver, and then they rebuild it from all the data, right? So they break it down to molecules. You can do the same thing in FileMaker with images. It's called Base 64. We've done it before. In fact, if you watch our live stream training, there's some video in there where we have the transporter beaming a dog on it from point A to point B and trying to explain what Base 64 is. Base 64 is a transporter process that takes a picture of the dog, not a real dog, takes a picture of the dog or a sound file or something that's not text, and it turns it into text. Literally, it turns into a perfect representation of text. So there's a command called encode base 64. So I'm just going to do it right here. I'm not going to get too crazy with this. I'm going to go over here. If I actually want to set the photo, the image of Rubens into a variable, that's the actual graphic right there. I'm just going to leave it there. I'm going to move it down. I'll get rid of it momentarily. I need to, something about base 64. Base 64, encode and decode. That is materialize or dematerialize in Star Trek lingo. So encode is where we're going to take the body, we're going to turn them into little bits and then shoot them through the air, okay? Base 64 encode. We're going to take the graphic and encode it, okay? Hit OK. Hit OK. Save it. Now, this is what it was last time when I tried to actually do a picture, right? I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say save. I'm going to run it. 1, 2, 3, run. Okay. And if I open this up, all that BS right there. I'm not, and it's huge. It's not necessarily super fuel efficient. That's huge. All that is the molecular code that molecular. I'm mixing Star Trek and FileMaker together. Although the little molecules and atoms of that image, and then we can beam, because it's text, we can beam it from point A to point B. So if you want to decode that, you can get the image back out. So that's what this is about. Base 64 encode decode. Base 64 is not a FileMaker construct. It's like the word variable. Variable, I learned it from FileMaker, so therefore only FileMaker should have it. Variables are in every programming language. Base 64 is a normal thing that is done on the web these days.
Do you preface a variable name with a C, N, or D to remind you this is a character, numeric, or date value? Sometimes I store a number or date to a character variable.
Okay, this is the last topic. We're at the top of the hour, but we've got to cover this. This is casting. Who asked the question? Okay, great. It's Maui Lani. Listen, this is very important. Okay, this is an advanced thing that if you're a brand new beginner, don't worry about this. But this is very, very important. When you define a field, you tell FileMaker what to expect that goes in the field. If we define it as text, FileMaker expects it to be text. If you define a number field, there will be a single number. Now, you could try to jam other stuff in there. FileMaker will likely protest, complain, and or not behave the way you expect it to. However, text is text. That's a string. A number is a number kind of thing. You have calculations. You have containers, right? Images and stuff. You have date fields, time fields, and timestamp fields, right? So these right here are all basically the field types that we define. This is so important. When you set a variable, and remember there's no container, right? So that's not one of them, but there are text, number, date, time, and timestamps. That's like 5 different ones. When you notice that when we set a variable in here, really, if this was like more of a legit programming business, you would come over here, and when you define the logo, you'd say, oh, this is going to be text. This is going to be number. It makes sense, right? Because it has to know, the bucket has to know what goes in the bucket, right? That makes sense? So what goes in the bucket? When we're in field definition schema, we tell the bucket what's coming. Okay, we tell it what's coming. When you define a script or a variable, FileMaker guesses its telepathic powers. I mean, like Johnny Carson used to put that thing above his head, right? Like the gray Houdini was trying to read the answers, right? It's trying to read your mind and guess what's in there based upon what you set in there. If I create a variable, and in the variable, the first thing I set into it is today's date, which is 9/18/23 for me. If you're in Europe, it's 18/9/23. Okay. It's going to go, oh, you want a date, and it sets it as a date. Then in the next command, if it's a global variable, you'll still cast it like a mold. You molded it into a date field. If you try to stick a bunch of text in there, the results might be erratic or not what you expect. It didn't handle it, or maybe it doesn't keep it, or you get an error message, right? So the idea is that if you have a variable, when you first define the variable, FileMaker is going to take a very intelligent guess and guess the kind of data you're putting in there. It's called casting. I understand variables are session to the hardware session specific one. Their globals are saved in the session, local are saved within the script. The casting is automatic. As an advanced developer, just keep that in the back of your mind. If you start getting bizarre behavior with a variable, you need to see when it was first defined and what you put in it. Okay, does that make sense? It's not something I almost ever worry about as a senior developer, because normally I use variables very mission specific. But if you stick a date in there and you expect it to be a number or text, you might have a problem. Question.
Is it possible to define only global variables, even instead of local variables? So if you never wanted to use a local variable, could you just use global?
Yeah, you can use, listen, it's not, you have to use one or the other. We're just telling you these are the two choices you can use. When I first started off, I only did global variables because I was learning how, remember, I came from the world of, there were no variables, we had global fields, right? And a global field is very similar to a global variable. So I only use globals because that way my brain didn't have to shift too much. Local variables were this weird thing, this construct that would exist during the life of a script and then would die at the end of the script. I'm like, oh, that's dumb. but there are times when you need that as a more advanced developer. You don't have to use either one of these. The only times you have to really use them is when you're doing like a import command or an export record command, and you want to drop a file to a specific path, save as a PDF to on the computer desktop somewhere. Those you have to use a variable for those. That's the one time when you must. There's no other way. Well, there's no other easy way around. I recommend variables for that. But yeah, you don't have to use either one. Next question.
Is there a logical type variable?
Well, variables are contain the results from a calculation. So understand that when I'm over here, this is, I'm setting a variable logo. Okay. This right here, that's I'm setting it. This is the logical calculation for it. So variables can and will store static text that you put in there. It'll also store the results of a logical calculation. However, you have to run some sort of command to generate that calculation, right? So you can do it there. You could do it like this. You could come up here. I'm going to close this. Say I'm up here and I say set field, specify address to, some sort of calculation or whatever, or string. And then once that's set in that location, I could come over to my variable and say, hey, take on the value of address, right? So, you have unlimited flexibility. So here we set the address field on the current record. We talked about context on the current record. Then while it's still in there as 1, 2, 3, 4, it's also going to set the variable called logo. So if I run it over here, it says this East Reuben, whatever street. If I run this at play, save all scripts, 1, 2, 3, 4, that was step 1. Step 2 is to take that value out of there and stick it in the variable. If I say view data viewer, there it is. So really, in a lot of ways, a variable is like a text field, a number field, a date field, a time field, or a timestamp. It's not in and of itself, it's not a self-processing calculation, and it's not an image. If you want a calculation, you set it into it. But there's benefits to this, because if you do it this way, then you can optimize the performance of your scripts, because you can set it in a variable and call it over and over and over again. Other questions?
Comment from code to go. The number type is used to store a Boolean value 1 or 0, but it can represent them as enumerated types true and false.
Yeah, code to go is correct. So if we're talking about just a Boolean 0, 1 kind of thing in FileMaker, yeah, just keep in mind that when you first define the variable, you want to cast it correctly. So the first time you use it, you don't want the variable to say equal to Big Mac attack at McDonald's, close quote, because then it's a string, right? Yeah, I wouldn't read too much into that. It's one of those things you get a little bit farther along, you start to figure out how these things work. But the short version is that you generally want to, if you start using one as 0s and 1s, and keep using as 0s and 1s, don't mix other stuff into it. If you need something else, use another variable, okay? I'm just trying to keep you out of trouble and beating your head against the wall, because it's one of those things it's never a problem until it's a problem. And typically you're a more senior developer, and then you're like, God, why does this code not work? And you start stepping through it, and then why is this variable so boogered up? It's wrong. And I said it right here correctly. That's because it was created, molded earlier in the session, and FileMaker made an attempt to guess what the molding should be. So just keep that in mind as an advanced developer. If you're a beginner, please don't worry about this. There's so many other things in life to worry about. This is like if you got you're in college, you have finals next week, and you're worried about an asteroid that might hit the planet. You got other bigger problems to worry about, like finals and not flunking your exams. Ask me how I know that should be a concern. 53 or whatever, and I still have every once in a while nightmares about the that went on at UC Davis, right? An engineering degree, legit engineering degree. Oh, Ruben says that the image is in there. That's why we were using it. We were passing it back and forth between multiple FileMaker files, and we use base64 to do that, to transport it. Literally, so yeah. So FileMaker tries to help you out by being smart as often as it can, but every once in a while you get a little bit elaborate, and they can't think for you. So good one, Ruben. Thank you for that. That's an interesting question, Ruben. Can I test that real quick? I just want to see if it really is super thoughtful or if it kind of sucks. So I got 2 containers. I got logo and logo 2. If I write close that, script workspace, if I go, let's do this. I'm gonna delete. Yes, delete. Oh, it's being dumb, right? Whatever, delete that too. Delete. I'm gonna write a new script here. Set variable to $$ photo. Set it from business logo. Okay. Then just to have this thing like settle itself a little bit to make sure it's commit records dialog off. That shouldn't affect variables at all, but I'm just trying to get FileMaker to, I even could put a pause in here right quick just to get, it's more of an advanced technique. We ran this the other day again where something wouldn't work. We put a 0.3 second pause in it, like 0.3 seconds, and it allowed FileMaker just enough time to catch up and update itself and then generate the correct result, right? More of a definitely intermediate kind of idea. And then so what I can do is I can say set field to the new logo 2 equal to the $. By the way, see it auto correcting right here in me? That's Monkey Bread software doing that. That's not normal. If free Monkey Bread, if you install the Monkey Bread plugin, will automatically try to give you the variable that you need automatically. It's very nice like that. So I'm going to say that. I'm going to say, okay. So over here, we got photo 1, you got photo 2. So it is there. So it's there, but you can't see it, Margaret, right? And if you try to like shoot, depending on where the deal is with this, Ruben, we ran into this the other day, where if you did enough janky stuff with it, it would drop the photo out of the variable. The photo would drop, right? Margaret, with a problem, we had a problem with it dropping. So we had to base 64 to get it to go from point to point. So I can't remember the jankiness of it. So, but you're not going to see it in the data viewer, right? So we're going to update this curriculum once again. And some of the comments from you folks is great, right? Cool. Got to run. Thank you, Stu. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. We'll catch you tomorrow for a beginning of relationships. Hang on to you. That one's going to be tough. Got a report of an individual up here who may be a FileMaker license. Well, it's potentially expired. Look at the back of that car right there. Looks like the FileMaker license has expired. Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle. Sir, step out of the vehicle. Sir.